Okay, so next up, we're going to go to our last panel for today, which is going to be looking at alternative ways to monetize your games. We have with us a whole bunch of fascinating people, starting off with Kayleigh from PG.biz. We've also got Robert from Celer Network. We've got Vedran from Phezos. We've got Minwoo from Dodreams. We've got James from Fyber. And we've got Robert from Unity. So, you'll be glad to know that I'm not moderating this one. So I'm going to hand over to Kayleigh. Kayleigh, over to you.
Thanks, Oscar. Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayleigh. I am the staff writer for PocketGamer.biz. So to kick the panel off, if we could let everyone introduce themselves. So tell us your name, company, and a bit of what you do. If we start with Robert G.
Yeah, Robert Garfinkle. I am the user acquisition director at Celer Network. It's a real money gaming platform. In prior roles, I did both user acquisition and monetization for mid-core and strategy games for Nexon, Netmarble, Elex. I've been in the industry since about 2013.
Cool. And Vedran?
Hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a marketing manager at Phezos, a game studio from Croatia. We are making games for our clients and publish our own titles. And our biggest project so far is a Crosswise, story-driven crossword game that's in the later stage of development. And yeah, we are pretty excited about the soft launch and stuff. And yeah, that's for the intro.
Cool. And James?
Hi, everyone. I'm James Hughes. I'm the Vice President of Supply at Fyber. I joined Fyber roughly 7 months ago after almost 10 years at Millennial Media, which then turned into AOL and then Verizon Media. I won't go through the whole story, but I've been in ad tech for about 10 years, always on the supply side, working closely with publishers to drive maximum revenue through display monetization.
Cool. And Robert May?
Yeah, hi, Robert May here. I work at Unity, where on a service called the Unity Distribution Portal, where I help developers to connect to alternate app stores using that free service. And prior to Unity, I worked at several ad networks, also on the supply side, mostly in ad monetization in-app at both performance-based ad networks and also 100% brand ad-based ad network.
And finally, Minwoo.
Hey, nice to meet you. My name is Minwoo Lee, and I'm working as a head of product at Dodreams. It's an independent Finnish studio in Finland. And before I joined here, I used to work at EA and Ubisoft and Rovio as a head of design and creative director. And here I'm mostly overseeing all the product portfolio and strategy, and also all the monetization and engagement metrics. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. I'd like to get things started with, what are the current big methods of monetization at a glance?
I'm happy to jump in. I mean, I think pretty open-ended question, right? So, if you're looking at what Fyber and companies like Fyber are focused on, there's still a very large amount of display advertising that is being driven by in-app studios, whether that be banners and full screen interstitials. Rewarded video has become obviously a huge revenue generator for many of the major gaming publishers that are out there. I think over the last few years, you've seen a shift into this more casual and hyper casual world where display monetization really lends itself a lot better to that versus maybe some of the different verticals where in-app purchases and offer wall and just upfront payments work a little bit better. And so obviously those are two of the ones that dominate. And I think you start to see new types of monetization that are being driven almost on a daily basis, new innovation that's coming out daily, whether it be audio ads and how audio ads play not only into audio vertical, but how it can play into the gaming vertical or into others. And that's becoming a larger push as audio becomes a larger push with podcasts and companies like Spotify and Pandora growing so rapidly. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, I think, everyone's experimenting, but those are probably the core, forms of monetization that have been around for a while and probably aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
That's a really good insight. I would like to also add just one more kind of trend, and everyone knows about the battle pass. So over the past years, we are really relying on the gacha and the monetization. But then we found that it's all about the players' motivation, because nowadays players, regardless they are casual players or mid-core players or hardcore players, the players play the game because of their motivation and aspirational goal. And even the hyper-casual users and the developers try to get those meta games and the players' long-term engagement, because players see what would be the very tangible, the benefit and value creation in the game, and they are willing to pay for that in a purchase or watching ad. If there's no such aspirational goal or no motivation, then they wouldn't do that. So that's what is one founding behaviorally they are paying that. They are really focusing on that and willing to pay that. So because of that, we recently think about, the many small studios in Finland. We are recently start to think about what is the player's goal and motivation and how to deliver that. And we're still trying to look at a player's journey, which is starting from day 0 to day 1,825 days, which is 5 years of the live service. So it's all about the aspiration and the player's journey and the motivation from short term to mid term to long term. So that what is the timing and, kind of value that they see, the kind of durable investment on their monetization and items and things like that. So those are just like a small findings last a few years that we are trying to achieve and deliver those value to the players.
Cool. Anybody else got anything to add?
Just to dovetail on the motivation note, switching into real money gaming where there's a head-to-head component, the motivation is very clear on that. And I find that this space has a lot of potential for innovation, since it is kind of off to the side from the regular IAP ecosystem. And I think that having the players play against each other in this sort of like esportsy head-to-head mentality is going to be a vision that we see expanded in the next few years as well.
That's very interesting, because I was a creative director a few years ago at EA, and my title was actually SimCity Build It. And after 2 to 3 years of the live service, we try to find out what would be the next experience we can monetize and also deliver some kind of really exciting value to the users. And as we all know that SimCity, we saw today is a simulation game, and the users are all the fanboy or all the players from the original SimCity Build It. But that was kind of half true and half not true, because there are a lot of new mobile users who really want to also compete each other. So instead of delivering some more simulation or crafting materials and new content, we actually developed for 1 year about competitive game mode, which is a clan war. And we saw that there should be some kind of competitive motivation and this kind of, the desire to progress and compete within the clan, so clan versus clan, and by delivering the crafted material. So the result was quite interesting, because we found that not all the SimCity Build It players wanted to play Clan War, but there are certain percentage of players who would like to play it and would like to spend their money to, easily and quickly get those resources to compete with other clans. So again, what I'm talking about is all about, again, the motivation. And even one game, there are a lot of different players and demographics and the segments. So not only one like motivation, and there's multiple motivation. It's very important to catch what would be the motivation we deliver those tangible values and monetize on top of that kind of segment. So that's one learning I have done in a few years ago.
It's very interesting.
Okay, cool. So if we take a look at ad monetization, it's a long-established form of advertising in mobile. But how has this form of monetization changed in the last few years?
Maybe I can take on this. Well, we came to the point where a large number of gamers understand why ads are necessary, and they're willing to consume them if it brings some value in return, right? And this trend is growing, and well-known case is Germany, where in the last 3 years we have about 40% increase in the number of players who would rather watch ads than pay for a game. I think that's significant data to to consider in this case. But I think the biggest change comes with personalization. If you read studies, for example, from Facebook Audience Network, you will see that players like ads that are useful, that are interesting, and that are relevant. And this means there's a high demand for well-targeted ads. And with all these machine learning tools, segmentation, in-app bidding, and so on, I believe we are on the right path to creating a situation where everyone wins, and to slowly remove this bad stigma from ads that attack you from everywhere, right? So if you can provide quality content and tailor your ad strategy right, then players will be happy to consume ads in order to be able to play your game for free.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think what Vedran said is completely accurate, and you're seeing more and more of the ability to target, be accessible to everybody, as opposed to just the majors of Google and Facebook, where I feel like that's a big shift that we're starting to see away from more of the black box world where you're not really sure what's going on behind the walls to more of a transparent world. And I think that's what, speaking from the advertiser side, not necessarily the publisher side, that's what they're looking for. They want to know what audiences they're buying. They want to know, at what price they're buying them at. You're seeing measurement companies explode, and when you're looking at like the OMSDK and IAS and Moat and what they've been able to do to bring more confidence, I think, to the buyers that they can buy in the mobile ecosystem. All of these things have always been, not always, but they've been there for desktop and mobile web. And so they're very comfortable in buying in those mediums because they've been doing it for so long. When I first got into mobile, it was a lot of the same buyers buying over and over and over again. It was a lot of performance. And I think brands were a little bit nervous to buy mobile, one, because they didn't get it, two, it was still new, and three, it was predominantly gaming, which it still is today. And I don't think that's a problem. I think what's happening is that brands are recognizing that the same person that reads the New York Times or reads a major publication is the same person that's playing a game on the subway on the way to work in the morning. And so they're becoming more comfortable with the fact that they can find their audience that they're looking to target everywhere, and not just in certain forms, and not focused on verticals, but more focused on the actual audience. I say device ID, but obviously that's or advertising IDs, which will become a little bit more difficult to utilize as we move forward. And so it'll be interesting to see the innovative ways that different companies come up with how to solve for that. But at least the last 2 years where we've seen things change, I think, is just a confidence, specifically buying in-app inventory, which has been exciting to see.
Yeah, just as a kind of aside here, looking ahead a little bit on this question, I do see a bit of an iceberg for the ad monetization ecosystem. With IDFA getting removed, a lot of the programmatic stuff is going to have to kind of like redesign itself. Facebook raised a gigantic red sort of flag when iOS 14 was looking like it was going to just remove the IDFA right away. And with all of that, I wonder how the overall ecosystem is going to deal with price inconsistency or not relevant ads being served to people, which is very likely to happen for a long period of time following any sort of like massive disruption to the fundamental data layer.
To build on that, so I think we're all like in agreement that ads have been pretty much embraced by players, and that's not really controversial anymore. It's been very well embraced, especially rewarded video. But I think something that's really interesting is to look at Lion Studios. They recently introduced a game called Ancient Battle, which has hyper casual elements, but it also has IAP in it, and they really push the IAP in the game too. And so I think they're a really smart publisher. And I think that they're onto something by trying to find a balance now between not just pure ads, but also introducing IAP back into the game and how to do that effectively.
I think that's a really good example. I had a chance to chat with some of the hyper-casual publishers and companies, and all of them really tried to add some monetization and IAP-driven features and monetization, especially meta games on top of the hyper-casual mechanics. But then my question was, what is the actual value? What is the players who would like to willingly pay those IAP things instead of watching ads? So I don't believe it's just not about adding meta games on top of the hyper casual mechanic, but there should be free-to-play design from the scratch to design those kind of very intuitive core gameplay, but then also adding meta games and long-term engagement features to drive those IAP things. I just haven't seen yet what would be the successful example of that. What I know is that if you guys remember a few years, 2 years ago, there was Archero and random dice in South Korea. Those kind of very hyper casual games, but merging with the meta games. So we call it as a hybrid casual, we can say. So those kind of examples are always very interesting. And I'm pretty sure they are not only relying on the ad monetization, but also heavily on the IAP-driven monetization as well. So those are the very interesting examples, I think.
Okay, so if we was to move on to listening instead of watching, so audio ads, they are fresher and less invasive to monetize users as they can continue to play without stopping to watch a video. How can games utilize this method?
Well, I think that's...
Go ahead. No, please go.
Yeah, I think that games are basically the perfect ground for audio ads, because we can be very, very creative with this. We can have, I don't know, special areas, spots, or characters that will trigger these ads and thus make them fit the game content, so they don't just pop up from nowhere. And we can also make progress bars for ad rewards that start to fill up at the moment the audio ad starts to play. And in this way, we put the players' focus on rewards instead of the ad stealing their whole attention like it is with video ads. And I believe this way we can make it into a really satisfying experience for a user at first.
But I think the key to that is that it needs to be rewarded. It needs to be, called upon by the user, because you can easily ruin the user experience if you just start throwing, audio ads in there. And I work at an ad network, and a lot of the partners I work with, the feedback we get specifically with rewarded video or with standard video ads is when they're not auto muted, it's a major issue because people aren't expecting the ad. So you have to make sure they're expecting it. And because if you're on the subway, you're in a classroom, you're at work, and that audio ad goes off, it's not going to be a great look. So understanding exactly when and where they fit in is extremely important. But I agree that I think if intertwined into a game the right way, you could have someone completely continue playing a level while actually feeding an ad to them while they're playing the game. So never disrupting them playing the actual gaming, not having to take them out of the gameplay and still, rewarding them with something while generating revenue and being able to keep your product free, which, is the end goal. So it'll be interesting to see how, I think we'll start to see more of this over the next couple of years in different ways that companies experiment with it. I think it could be a really good tool if used the right way.
I think it's very likely that this type of ad could be a gateway for brand into mobile, which is, I think, a great goal to have. But I see there could be major challenges with any performance-based advertisers in attribution. It seems like this is very likely to have major challenges on that front.
Okay, so leading on from that, what are some other examples of non-invasive monetization methods?
Well, I'd say, one example of non-invasive monetization would be, for example, my company's service, the Unity distribution portal, makes it easier to get onto alternate app stores, right? And so if you've got a game that's already monetizing well, rather than thinking about, okay, how can I put in some more ad SDKs or crank up, the in-app purchase revenues? How about just expanding the distribution for the game? And so, so the UDP service gets developers to access over 1 billion MAU, and these are like users that in some cases, like with Huawei, they have new phones that don't even have Google Play on it. So these are entirely new players that you can tap into, and just new markets as well. So I think that's one thing to think about. It's not just like, how do I get more ads in my game or get more in-app purchase out of the game, but how do I just expand the reach and do it in a way that makes it easier?
Okay, so having discussed various monetization methodologies, what are the advantages and the drawbacks to ads, in-app purchases, and real money gaming?
I can kind of like start with this one because I have some experience on all three. With ads and with IAP, you're really you're paying a bit more to the third party. Well, in this case, it would be Apple or Google, or to the mediation provider, and so there's a bit more of like a cut that kind of gets taken out in that capacity than in real money gaming. But real money gaming is a little bit more fringe. There's a little bit less established partners in the space. There's very few platforms to utilize. We're building a platform now. There's a couple of other platforms. Ours is uniquely built off of blockchain, so it's meant to be built for kind of like an esports, record of the history. The real sort of like upside the real downside to monetization is all monetization is disruptive to like the user's gameplay experience. There's not really like a way to make it fit exactly in, because nobody ever really wants to pay. So you have to really, like Minwoo said, focus in on motivations of players and appeal to them in a pretty specific way. For this reason, rewarded video, because it's congruent with user motivation, is a very strong one. Whereas interstitial tends to be kind of disruptive and cause churn, in my experience.
Another product that probably doesn't get as much love as it used to because it's been kind of deprecated on the iOS side, but at Fyber we have an offer wall product and it works well, and we're seeing it adopted by more Android developers because it allows you to do a pretty non-intrusive opportunity to monetize, right? You can direct a player to that offer wall, and it acts as if you're pushing an IAP without having to come out of pocket, right? It's asking you to complete a survey. It's asking you to complete, some type of call to action in return for a currency, whether that be a soft or a hard currency. And we've seen very innovative ways of being able to take an offer wall, maybe have multiple offer walls within the app, but again, very non-intrusive. It's not forcing the user to go that route to be able to generate currency, but it's another way in which you can drive revenue in a way that's not throwing an ad in front of somebody and taking away from the gameplay. The user can kind of find that wall outside of what their standard kind of, game is, grab that currency and move on. So we've seen a lot of success with that. Granted, it lends itself to one operating system much better than it does the other.
Just want to add, I think interstitial gets a bad reputation, but when used correctly, it can really, it can be quite fun. Like think about Among Us, for example. After you played, for 6 or 8 minutes, you get this ad skippable, 5-second skippable interstitial, and I almost welcome it because like it supports the developers. They need to make their money, and it's just not intrusive at all. So you just got to think about the right time and place for that ad unit.
Yeah,
Robert, to add to that,
I
was going to say one thing. The one thing I feel is that I don't get to choose when commercials are shown to me when I'm watching television, right? And so I feel like it's a very similar type of use case without being nearly as intrusive, right? Usually it's one ad, 5-second skip, you move on, as opposed to a 2-minute commercial spot where I'm trying to get back to whatever I was watching. And I think users are kind of used to that just because of the way they live their daily lives. But I agree with you that it does get a bad rep for something that really isn't all that intrusive.
Okay, so battle passes, they are becoming a more popular way to monetize in the long term. What is it that makes them so effective, and which games do battle passes work well for?
I think earlier I just described this briefly, why battle pass is very popular and it's going to be even more popular is because it's all about, so players really want to see the really concrete value on their investment. And then battle pass usually double up or triple up their value significantly. So if you are really right segment and the right players for that type of game, whatever you are making, and then battle pass always giving you even more values and even more, the multiplier of what you are spending. So usually there is like a normal pass and premium pass, like a battle pass, and battle pass always give you more exclusive content and things like that. So it fulfills all the three very basic behavioral motivation, human motivation. Like I want to be the best, I want to be very unique, and I want to be recognizable. So all those kind of, the social and competitiveness and also uniqueness. So the Battle Pass all fulfill this kind of three motivations, and that's one of the reason I think it's going to be even more popular. And that's the reason I think for, on top of the Battle Pass, maybe subscription model could be even more popular, because nowadays even the casual players or hyper casual players recognize the value of the Battle Pass if the game is the right game and the Battle Pass and the placement is in the right timing. So I see all the potential of this Battle Pass and things like that. And normally, if you play mid-core games and you see more common Battle Pass and the subscription, but I believe that there will be more and more casual games Battle Pass and also even hyper casual game Battle Pass in the near future. So that's kind of my assumption at the moment.
I largely view the Battle Pass at this point as more of a tool for retention and driving, like, you know, your loyal user retention over a longer period of time than it is really in like a new user conversion tool. It is something that is getting more and more accepted by the bulk of users. So, you know, it is a good, people recognize the value of investment, but what the real design motivation for it is to keep the paying users engaged with the content for a longer period of time, and that is what it's really effective for.
That's a great point. It's like a refreshment. It's not all just one-off Battle Pass, you know, from the scratch, but every X amount of time, the live ops actually refresh the Battle Pass content and the scheme and the system. So the players will feel that it is always refreshed over time, so they are not get bored and they are willing to, you know, do this again and again and again in order to see and feel that I am playing the live game and everything is live and, you know, everything is very fresh and, you know, fulfilled my desire and motivation over and over again and again.
So having said that, and you know why they work and why they're going to continue to grow in popularity, what types of games can't utilize the Battle Pass method that well?
At this point, I've never seen it done well for hyper casual. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, hyper casual definitely, but maybe maybe there is some room for it. Maybe you can utilize this concept and make it into some VIP subscription, something, right? But yeah, I believe that you need to think about these things early in the early stages of development, because we see developers thinking about monetization in almost when the game is already almost done, and just they do their research to see what are the popular monetization models, and then they somehow are experiencing that these models doesn't work for them. So monetization models need to make some kind of organic unity with the game content to work. Right?
Yeah. I think hyper casual games, they're D1 and very short term retention is good. But then, as we have seen, D7 or D14 onwards, the numbers are going down. And in order to utilize Battle Pass or Premium Pass or subscription model, you need a reason to progress. The players should feel that I really desire to progress the content or games or you know, whatever system. And hyper casual games yet haven't had those kind of deeper meta games or engagement, so it's very difficult to buy in, you know, those kind of Battle Pass concepts. So I think many developers already realize it, and I know that many developers try to deliver more desire to progress and tangible value and durable investment on their players' journey, so that even the hyper casual game would be able to get, you know, try those Battle Pass. But the condition should be something that there should be some kind of, you know, fulfillment and feeling that I really want to progress, I desire to progress, instead of, you know, just pay some, you know, money to optimize your kind of things, because there's no such a deeper economy in the most of the hyper casual game. But I still think there's a room to improve and innovate this monetization methodology, even in the hyper casual world, in my opinion.
I agree.
Okay, so if we take a look at player spending, what content do players actually want to spend money on?
Well, as Minwoo had kind of talked about, the anything that puts you in direct competition with others and improves your uniqueness relative to like the other people that can be seen. Social elements tend to drive a lot of monetization. There's kind of a lot of monetization triggers that center around this sort of like tend your garden sort of mentality. The people want to grow and build their own little digital presence, and they will spend for these sorts of things. By and large, people also are, I think what I'm beating here is the drum of competition. That's people really don't go in for PvP, player versus player.
Yeah, I think that's all true and it's all right, at least. I would like to only add two on top of that. So one is, we all know that time management. So time is money in the free-to-play game. So everything about the efficient time management as an item or skipper, that would be a really good monetization methodology still. And on top of that, reward double or triple, something like not only just skip the time, but I can get another thing, like a buy one, get one kind of things by watching ad or paying small amount of soft currency or hard currency. Is still very, very efficient monetization methodology. So I would like to add those two on top of what you just said.
So is it better to give a game a purchase price or keep it free to play in order to monetize with additional content? Which method works better?
I think there's no reason to really pigeonhole yourself into one or the other. I think what I found works really well for most publishers is monetize. I think it's been proven that the majority of users are more than likely not willing to pay for a game. They're okay digesting some sort of ad experience in return for being able to play the game for free. But you're going to have that percentage of users that don't want the ad experience. So give them the opportunity to have the version of the game without the ad experience. Offer a 99-cent ad-free, remove all ads type option. And I think if you have users that want to move in that direction, they will. And then you'll make guaranteed revenue off of them versus, what may not be guaranteed going kind of standard ad monetization route. But I think the best case that I've seen it used is given an app purchase, whatever that price wants to be, remove ads. And if you have users that want to move in that direction, you can do it. I've also seen really innovative ways of publishers that when a user makes an in-app purchase, they move to remove all the ads, right? So now it's not really offering, the 99-cent ad-free version. It's, we're going to give you this reward in terms of removing ads from the game if we see that you're a heavy in-app purchase buyer, right? So those are more sophisticated publishers that can have that user level data to understand who's making purchases and who's not, but make sure you're not inundating your user with ads. If you have users that want to spend money, take the ads away from them. If you have the ability to do that, it's going to make for a better user experience in the end, and you're going to generate revenue regardless.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about that. But even in that circumstance, that the apps that you're talking about here, they're showing up in the free apps section. They're just monetized to remove the ads, right? I think the question, if I'm understanding it more, is like, is there a reason to put a price on your app specifically? And I think that unless you're porting a game over from another platform, like Steam or from Xbox or something else, I don't really think that it makes sense to make a paid game for discoverability alone. You'll have very few downloads relative to if you had a free game, maybe as much as less than a tenth. And so, if you're going to become a sort of organic success, or if you think that you're like a Plague Inc. type game or something like this, it's very possible to go the paid app route. But even, if you look at like Among Us, the recent kind of sleeper hit, on mobile, it was free to play. On Steam, it was paid. And they did that very well. They split that difference.
In the alternative app store space, from my experience, I've seen that it can really hamper your distribution opportunities. And so our service is connected with 9 stores, and just 2 of them support pay to download games. And I think that also has something to do with the fact that there's lower interest in pay to download games, especially in Asia. But I think that's just something to take into account. I mean, and I think, Robert, you really nailed it too, that if you have a pay to download game, really, you need that marketing power of it being a hit, you know, on console or something like that to really be able to get that distribution or adoption.
Right. With premium titles, is monetization in a premium too much? Should players have to keep paying for content after they've bought a game?
It's counter expectational to user, like kind of users that pay for games generally don't want to be sold DLC, and they'll call it DLC because that's what it's called on other platforms. But there are cases where I think it's acceptable. Like I played Carcassonne, it's a board game on my phone sometimes, and there's DLC that are paid in there. And I think that type of thing is kind of acceptable, but it has to be meaningful value add at that point. It has to be growing the content depth in order for it to be justified for a paid game.
I think one challenge is, like, I remember as a kid, I'm gonna date myself here, but like when like Mario 2 was coming out, the game was about $60 or so, right? And now I have a child the same age, and when I buy him a new Nintendo game, it's the same price, right? And so you think the developers need to find ways to make more money if they're keeping these this of course is more console related, but you know, if the price is the same, you got to make some more money. So I definitely support paying for, you know, especially like DLC content, as long as it's, you know, fun and rewarding.
Right, so that was it for my questions. Before we take any from the audience, was there anything else you guys wanted to cover?
Can I jump in on that last one?
Yeah.
So on that last one, there's actually some really interesting experiences we've had with the pay up front and paying game. There was an Activision game based on Pitfall that was out in, I think, 2014, so quite a long time ago. And we saw a direct relationship between the amount of money they had to pay up front and the impact it had on spend. This wasn't the only example, but I think it was like $1.99 to buy it, and then there were in-game items, and basically you saw a 2x on the upfront price on what people were willing to spend, of the small proportion of people who were willing to spend more in the game. So what it seems happens in pay up front games is it caps people's willingness to spend in the game. Similar game, very different, but similar game, had no upfront payment. The amount of money that people were spending on average was significantly greater than $1.99 upfront. So you have to be really careful about expectation. I think Robert made this point. I think maybe, you know, in fact, both of Roberts I think made this point. It's all about what player expectation is. And setting up that desire, that motivation is actually key to all of these things, whether it's about the placement of advertising, whether it's about the structure of in-app purchases. There's so much stuff that you can cover that it just comes down to, do you love your players enough to give them something they want? There are loads of questions, and I don't want to rain on your parade, Kelly, because you've done a great job. But it'd be interesting to see if the guys have got any thoughts on some of these questions. So, for example, I suspect this one has been raised by somebody from Augury. I don't know what gave me the hint, but the tone of the question is all about how exciting this particular ad format is. But apparently Augury are offering a non-intrusive, apparently thumbnail ad at the end of a screen. Is that kind of new format useful? Is that new even? Is it? What do we think about sort of new attempts to create innovation like that? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Robert, do you have a thought on that? James, no.
I guess I'm not familiar with it, so
Okay.
I don't want to comment on something I'm not too familiar with. But it seems like it's like an overlay interstitial. So I'm trying to.
It sounds a bit like that, but
I'm trying to visualize kind of what that kind of format looks like.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it's too different than what has been around and what's out there. I mean, obviously, I think the one comment I would say, and I would say this to anybody who's monetizing, is never pigeonhole yourself to using one ad network or one media or one
absolutely
network, right? So the opportunity to keep your fill rates high and make sure you're maximizing revenue globally, depending on where your audiences are. You know, you don't have to work with 100 ad networks, but you definitely want to work with a handful to ensure you're maximizing that revenue. So that's my one comment I'd make on that.
I think there is a possibility of something interesting there. I think the idea that you actually don't take over the whole screen and you still provide an ad is something that's a slight variation. It's like a hybrid between a banner ad and an interstitial ad, but less intrusive. I would potentially argue one of the issues I always had with banner ads is that I think there was a study, I forgot who did it now, that something like 40% of banner ads were either fraudulent or accidental, which doesn't seem to me like the best experience. However, having a new value way of looking at it, I think maybe this is the point I'm trying to make is, I think, by constantly thinking about what the experience is like, but trying to do it from the point of view of the player, for me feels like the way to deal with these things.
Yeah, that's the key.
I'm kind of glad you said that, just because when I hear the word, thumbnail ad, I kind of hear something that looks like an icon that users are supposed to click on. And that makes me think that it's going to drive a lot of accidental clicks.
Yeah.
Which is, as you just kind of mentioned, a major driver of things like ad fraud and issues. So not to mention user sentiment. You don't want to be like sending somebody out of the app when they weren't expecting it.
I mean, I have seen some really interesting uses of cross promotion where people have put the actual icon of the other game within the frame of the screen. And that, I think, is really smart, provided you're communicating that that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Oscar, to that point, the one thing I do want to mention is, it's funny. I feel like native advertising has become this, commonality word that we all use in the industry, and I've never really seen true native come to the forefront yet. And I think it's almost there. When I say true native, it's like if I'm playing a racing game and the track has ads that are kind of built into the track, like that is, to my mind, native, as opposed to just a glorified banner ad, which I think is what native has become recently. And
don't get me started. I've been so annoyed about that language for so long. I have a problem at the moment where people are using location to describe VR when location means GPS. But then I'm old and realise that slang changes and definitions change as we go along, so I just have to suck it up. But to that point, I think it's an interesting one. It's because playable ads. So I have a visceral reaction against playable ads. I delete the game because that just annoys me. But they make lots of money. So again, this is I think maybe the question, really the last question we got time for, which is how often do we look back at the LTV impact rather than the ROAS impact, the return on advertising spend impact, or the return on investment impact? How much of us are spending time looking at the longer term, the sort of 60-day, 90-day impact of putting in ads, as opposed to the upfront commercial benefit? Is anyone looking at that? I mean, Vedran, Minwoo, do you guys have a thought on that?
I'm more thinking about creatives nowadays for the ad, or I mean, yeah, I have seen those. I have been playing also. I like the playing ad. I mean, I like it. It's very creative sometimes, but it's all about the user values. Like if that is the right type of ad for the users, or their right segmentation, and they are willing to download it. So I think so. We are looking at LTV like 90 days, for example, as a normal, kind of common way. But then I think it is becoming much shorter time. We need to add all those those kind of things, not like 10 seconds or 14 seconds, but maybe even 3 seconds or 5 seconds. We have to deliver very creative things to the users immediately, and within 3 to 4 seconds, we have to convert them into the games or game install. So that's kind of one view. So it doesn't matter what type of ad, like playable ad or those thumbnail ad, but it's all about the creatives nowadays. How fast and hook, how fast the ads can hook those potential players and make them download the games or other the applications. So I'm more thinking about the creatives, and 90 days LTV would be a good KPI to track.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm always, my favorite KPI for anything monetization is repeat use.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is the benchmark, the gold standard. Not because I'm not interested in how much money you make or the LTV. Of course I am. But if I know someone's repeat using ads or in-app purchases, I must have done something right.
Yep.
because it must be good enough for them to actually have a good experience. And if it is, then my chances of getting more revenue significantly increase. At least that's my experience anyway.
Agreed.
Cool. On that note, unless anyone's got any final comments, and Kayleigh, obviously feel free to sort of jump in. Do you have any kind of a last word you want to say?
Oh, just thank you to all you guys for joining the panel. It was great to host you, and thank you to the audience for watching as well.
That was great. Thanks, Kayleigh. And a great panel, great for everybody, and well, perfectly managed, shall we say? Let's put it that way. Really superb stuff. And just so you know, the Pocket Game actually happens to have a series of masterclass events going on, which I've posted in the chat. And of course, I'm biased because I'm running the one on game monetization design on I think it's on the 2nd of December. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about that, then feel free to check out Eventbrite or PocketGamer.biz.